She calls police on September 28, 2024, says her husband is missing. Not missing since this morning. Not missing since yesterday. 8 days. She's reporting him missing after 8 days. But here's the first detail that raises real questions. The Utah National Guard already knew something was wrong. 4 days before she ever picked up that phone, his command was asking questions. Because a man like Matthew Johnson does not simply stop showing up. He's 51, a member of the Utah National Guard, with a service record reportedly tied to special operations training. The kind of career built on being exactly where you're supposed to be, exactly when you're supposed to be there. So when he vanishes, and nobody in his unit hears from him, and nobody in his life hears from him, that absence gets noticed fast. By everyone except, it seems, his own wife. Jennifer Gledhill. That's the woman making this call. To understand the 8-day gap, we have to back up. This wasn't a happy marriage falling apart out of nowhere. This was a marriage already in freefall, weeks before Matthew Johnson disappeared. There was a divorce filing, a fight over custody of their 3 kids, and weeks earlier, something else, something that almost got buried in the paperwork entirely. Jennifer Gledhill had already gone to court, asked a judge to protect her from her own husband. That protective order got thrown out. Just days before Matthew Johnson disappeared for good. Was the danger real and missed? Or was there a completely different story sitting underneath that court filing? That's where we have to start. Welcome to the Hidden Chapters, uncovering the truth behind every crime. In August 21st, 2024, Jennifer Gledhill walks into court and files for a protective order against Matthew Johnson. Same day, she files for divorce. A judge grants it, temporarily. That's the standard first step. Emergency protection while the court reviews the actual evidence behind it. September 10th, 3 weeks later, a court commissioner looks at the case again. Doesn't dismiss it, extends it. 1 more week. Says they need more time to review what's in front of them. That's not a rubber stamp. That's a commissioner who isn't sure yet. Then September 16th, the order gets dismissed. Not extended again. Dismissed entirely. The ruling states Gledhill failed to prove abuse had occurred. A protective order she sought against a man trained in special operations with access to firearms as part of his service. Gone. 4 days later, according to what prosecutors would eventually lay out in court, the 2 of them are in a fight that ends with him never being seen alive again. There was already a court date on the calendar for this marriage, late October, a divorce hearing where both of them were supposed to show up and let lawyers hash it out. That hearing never happened. Matthew Johnson wasn't there to attend it, and by then, nobody could say for certain where he'd gone. Here's the harder question underneath all of this. If the order was dismissed because a commissioner didn't find enough proof, is this a woman the system failed right before something terrible happened to her? Or is there a different story entirely, one that won't come out until police start pulling phone records and bank statements? We're not there yet. First, we need the 4 days that actually decide this case. Then came September 20th, 2024, a Friday. According to charging documents, this is the night of a serious argument between Matthew Johnson and Jennifer Gledhill. Prosecutors would later allege the fight centered on infidelity, that Johnson had found out his wife was involved with someone else. And then September 21st, the last date anyone in Matthew Johnson's life has any contact with him. Not a text, not a call, nothing. For a man whose entire career runs on predictability, this is the day the pattern just stops. His truck turns up abandoned near the couple's home in Cottonwood Heights. Not at work, not on a trip, near the house. 3 days later, on September 24th, the Utah National Guard flags his absence. He hasn't shown up for duty, and in his line of work, that doesn't happen quietly. His command starts asking where he is. Then September 28th. 4 days after his own unit noticed something was wrong, Jennifer Gledhill calls Cottonwood Heights police, tells them her husband is missing, says Johnson told her he'd be gone for about a week and told her not to call him. A career National Guardsman, flagged absent by his own command 4 days earlier, and his wife's explanation is he asked for some space. Police don't buy it. Not for long. Because while Jennifer Gledhill is telling officers her husband just needed time away, there's a phone in someone else's pocket on the other side of town, already holding a very different account. One nobody investigating this case knew about yet. A man is about to walk into a police station, and what he's about to say is going to take a wrecking ball to, he just needed space. Before we hear what he told detectives, if you enjoy professionally researched true crime documentaries that focus on facts, not speculation, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue making videos like this. He walks into a police station, not as a suspect, as someone who apparently can't carry what he knows anymore. And what he tells detectives doesn't sound like a rumor. It sounds like a full account, laid out step by step. He says Jennifer Gledhill called him on September 22nd, 2 days after that fight with her husband. And on that call, according to what he'd later tell investigators, she told him something directly. That Matthew Johnson was gone. That she was the one responsible. Meanwhile, she's telling police a completely different story, that her husband asked for space. According to the informant, though, she'd already given someone else a very different version of events entirely. Who is this guy? Charging documents don't name him. What they do say is this: he and Jennifer Gledhill had been involved in an affair, and prosecutors would later allege that affair is exactly what triggered the argument on September 20th, that Matthew Johnson had found out. A motive starts to take shape here. Infidelity, uncovered 4 days after a protective order against him got thrown out of court. A marriage already headed to divorce proceedings in October. And an alleged confession, not to police, not to family, to the man she was reportedly seeing. But here's where things get weird. This wasn't described as a passing comment. According to the informant's account, Gledhill went into detail about that night. How Matthew Johnson lost his life in their bedroom while he slept. How she moved through the house afterward. How she handled his phone. How she moved his truck to a nearby neighborhood, the same truck that would later turn up abandoned near their home. She also allegedly described where she'd taken the scene afterward, a burial somewhere north of the city, a location detectives did not have yet. One more detail from that account investigators couldn't ignore. The informant said he'd noticed bruising on Gledhill's body. When he asked, she reportedly told him it came from moving her husband and cleaning up afterward. Now hold the timeline up against itself. September 22nd. This alleged confession happens. September 28th, 6 days later. Gledhill is on the phone with Cottonwood Heights police, calmly reporting her husband missing, sticking to the story that he just needed time away. 6 days of silence from the one person who, if this account is accurate, already knew the truth. For now, the entire case rested on one man's account. No body, no murder weapon, no forensic evidence. But that was about to change. Detectives don't get a search warrant off a phone call alone. They need something physical. Something that corroborates a story from a man who, on paper, has every reason to want Jennifer Gledhill out of his life, or maybe every reason to protect her. So they go to the house, and the house gives them something the informant's account never could on its own, a way to check it. Investigators note that the wall behind the master bed had been recently cleaned, not casually, with bleach. Thorough enough that it stood out to trained eyes immediately. And despite the cleaning, forensic testing still recovered evidence at the scene, testing that would eventually link it to a single male source. Bleach doesn't confess to anything by itself, but it raises an obvious question. Why scrub a bedroom wall down to nothing, days before calling police to report your husband missing? To understand what comes next, follow the money. While forensic teams work the house, other investigators pull financial records. What turns up doesn't look like a coincidence. 2 days before Matthew Johnson was last seen alive, records show a $1,000 wire transfer from Gledhill's father straight into her account. Separately, a text message surfaces. Gledhill to her father, "I need $13K by Friday." $13,000, requested from her parents, inside the exact window this entire case revolves around. Investigators don't stop at her accounts. They pull warrants for her father's accounts too. This has stopped being a map of one person's movements. It's becoming a map of a family. Then, months into the investigation, something surfaces that lines up with the informant's account almost exactly. A rooftop cargo container, the kind strapped to a car roof for extra storage, is recovered, reportedly turning up after a storm. Forensic testing connects it to Matthew Johnson. The informant had described a container just like it, weeks earlier. Said Gledhill told him she'd used one to move her husband through the house. The investigation had moved far beyond a single phone call. Independent pieces of evidence were beginning to point in the same direction. Every piece is lining up, except one. They still don't have Matthew Johnson. And they're about to learn his wife wasn't the only person cleaning that house. A neighbor watches Jennifer Gledhill's parents walk into the house. 5 hours later, they finally come back out, 11 at night. That's September 24th, 2024, the same day the National Guard is already flagging Matthew Johnson's absence, 4 days after the argument. Thomas and Rosalie Gledhill, inside their daughter's house for 5 hours, according to the neighbor watching from outside. When police eventually ask Rosalie Gledhill about it directly, she tells them she was only there for an hour. One account says 5 hours, one says 1. They don't match. Detectives don't get an answer right away. What they do get, weeks later, is enough to act on. October 24th, 2024, 3 weeks after Jennifer Gledhill's own arrest, both of her parents are taken into custody, charged with obstruction of justice. Not murder. That charge belongs to their daughter alone. Obstruction, allegedly helping cover up evidence in the days after Matthew Johnson lost his life. Here's what makes this harder to untangle. That $1,000 wire transfer from Thomas Gledhill to his daughter happened 2 days before Matthew was last seen. Did Jennifer Gledhill's parents know something was wrong before it happened? Or did they only get pulled in afterward, cleaning a house because their daughter asked them to, with no real idea what they were helping cover up? Neither has been charged with anything beyond obstruction. Neither has cooperated, according to arrest documents, in helping locate Matthew Johnson. This is where the case sits at its darkest point. A confession with no body to back it up. A financial trail nobody's fully explained. 2 parents in handcuffs. And a family. 3 children among them, now living under a no-contact order, cut off from their mother while the courts decide what actually happened inside that house. Matthew Johnson is still out there somewhere. Detectives believe they know roughly where. They just haven't been able to bring him home. 3 weeks after her parents are taken into custody, Jennifer Gledhill is in a courtroom herself. Bail hearing, February 28th, 2025. This is the moment prosecutors lay out everything they have. A prosecutor tells the court that on September 22nd, Gledhill allegedly confessed to the informant over the phone, describing how Matthew Johnson lost his life in the master bedroom as he slept, how she moved his body through the house, and where she says she eventually left him. Then the prosecutor adds something new: cell phone data. A map tracking Gledhill's movements on September 22nd from Cottonwood Heights all the way out to Kaysville. It's not just a phone call anymore. It's a location trail, Lining up with an account a judge is hearing in open court for the first time. The judge denies bail, not only because of the evidence. Prosecutors argue she poses a danger, specifically to the one man who came forward, the same man whose account started all of this. She stays locked up. The case grinds forward, the way these cases do. April 2025. A batch of search warrants, sealed since the start of the investigation, finally reach the public. This is when the world outside the courtroom first sees the $1,000 transfer. First sees the "I need $13K by Friday" text. First sees how deep investigators had gone into Gledhill's finances, and her father's, from day one. Then, almost a year later, January 2026, something small happens that says a lot. Gledhill writes a letter directly to the judge overseeing her case, not through her lawyer, just her. In it, she says she's sorted a few things out, says she doesn't need additional legal help right now, says she hopes this doesn't change the judge's opinion of her. You're not supposed to do that. A defense attorney unconnected to the case would later say it plainly. Direct contact with a judge isn't allowed unless both sides see it. The judge has to bring it up in open court, on the record, just to stay clean on procedure. A small moment, but a window. A woman awaiting trial for taking her husband's life, reaching out personally to the one person holding power over her future, apparently worried about how she's being perceived. The trial keeps moving, supposed to happen in June 2026. Delayed, pushed to December. 7 days on the calendar, whenever it finally happens. Here's the piece that makes this genuinely difficult for prosecutors, no matter how detailed that alleged confession sounds. Matthew Johnson has never been found. Not his remains. Not the weapon. Cottonwood Heights police say the search hasn't stopped, still focused on specific areas north of the city, the same general direction the cell data pointed to. But still looking is not the same as found. A defense attorney explained what that means for a jury. Without a body, this becomes what's known as a no-body case. Rare. Difficult. It hands the defense a legitimate argument that nobody can prove, beyond all doubt, what happened to a man who is, technically, still just missing. By now, investigators have assembled a case built on digital evidence, forensic testing, financial records, and witness testimony. But one crucial piece is still missing. No body. No weapon. No verdict. A woman, presumed innocent under the law, sitting somewhere between a phone confession and a jury that hasn't been picked yet. Somewhere north of Salt Lake City, investigators believe Matthew Johnson is still waiting to be found. Until that happens, every hearing, every motion, every new piece of evidence unfolds without the one person who can't testify. And that's what makes this case so difficult. Not just for prosecutors, but for a family still waiting to bring him home. We'll continue following this case as it unfolds. Subscribe so you don't miss any updates.
If this case stayed with you, you're not the only one. And if you're ready for the details most people miss, there's more waiting in the full Hidden Chapters playlist.